When I started this podcast, I wanted to focus on the supernatural, the secret plot, and the forgotten kingdom. I try to find topics that are intriguing but somewhat lighthearted so we can have fun and explore the mysterious. But there's one topic that looms in the background and overshadows everything we've talked about to this point: the occult. And while it is intriguing, it's not lighthearted or fun. It's serious, deep, and disturbingly deadly. Hey everyone, I'm Nick, your host, and to be frank, this can be such a complex subject that I don't really have the background to do it justice. Yet there it sits, week after week, month after month, casting a shadow over our world and everything we do. And here's an example of what I'm saying. If I jump in and start talking about Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, and the Moonchild, most of you are going to be lost. So, how do I present maybe the biggest conspiracy theory of them all and do it justice? Well, I can start by telling you something you already know. Bad thing doesn't have to be true. Bad thing just needs people to believe it's true in order to impact others. We see it all the time with online warriors who see a misleading headline and spend half their day venting in the wrong direction, or sometimes worse. I bring this up because most facets of the occult are really hard to believe. And I don't just mean the actual ideas, although they are pretty out there. I mean, it's hard to believe that so many people in power subscribe to and embrace the ideas. And there's been a big change over the years in publicity. When I was growing up, the idea that elites were involved with occult practices was fringe. There was evidence, but no one took any of it seriously. Bohemian Grove, for example, was established around 1878. Rumors of weird rituals in the California redwoods circulated for decades, but in the public conscience, it was unknown or considered a myth. Bill Clinton even famously joked at a campaign stop when asked about it. He said, "The Bohemian Club. Did you say Bohemian Club? That's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right? I've never been to the Bohemian Club, but you ought to go. It'd be good for you. You'd get some fresh air." Ironically, he spoke at the Grove in '91 as a presidential hopeful, but political double talk to secure votes isn't exactly breaking news, or exclusive to one party. In 2007, Andrew Meyer became famous as an early meme known as "Don't Tase Me, Bro." It went viral. Everyone laughed. Everyone forgot. Andrew Meyer was at a university Q&A with John Kerry and asked him if he was a member of Skull and Bones, the famous secret society whose members include William Howard Taft, both W. and H.W. Bush, and we did find out later John Kerry himself. Security rushed him, and he infamously cried out, "Don't tase me, bro." When I first saw the video back then, I laughed. I mean, Schadenfreude is real, and I'm sorry, but as an isolated clip, it's funny. But it was only years later that I learned what he was asking about. And believe me, this isn't a partisan issue. In fact, the occult may be the key thread that ties everything together, including what I consider the uniparty. Whether through initial desire or subsequent pressure, it seems like many elites are wrapped up in this thing. So, how has the publicity changed? Well, like I said, when I was growing up, you didn't see these things in the public. There was symbolism in a lot of pop culture, from Madonna to Spielberg, but the whole point at the time was for it to be subtle. There is no subtlety now. Olympic opening ceremonies have been rife with symbolism in plain view. What used to be a subtle pendant or brooch of Baphomet has now become giant 30-foot pentagrams, paganistic dance rituals, and open mockery of Christianity. Then there's the 2016 opening ceremony for the Gotthard Base Tunnel in Switzerland. The Swiss government allowed organizers to put on what they called a theatrical artistic performance celebrating Swiss history, the tunnel workers, and the connection between North and South Europe. The production used themes of struggle, death, rebirth, and human progress. Millions were put into it, and heads of state from all over Europe attended. What they witnessed was bizarre and disturbing. The purpose was to be celebrating a more than $12 billion infrastructure project, a truly fine piece of engineering. Instead, they got worship of goat-headed figures reminiscent of Baphomet, a large-winged androgynous fallen angel, semi-naked dancers in demonic costumes crawling, twitching, and moving like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, simulated sexual acts, and more along the same lines. And the whole thing was broadcast to millions. This is what some call revelation of the method. The idea that elites are now showing their occult beliefs in plain sight, passing it off as art. So right now, what the 45-year-old is alarmed by, the 25-year-old is desensitized to. What received pushback in the 80s and 90s is now embraced and promoted in the 2020s. So how do we enter into this crazy subject in a way that makes sense? Well, I'm going to try and start with kind of an Occult 101 because I have so much to learn myself. And to be honest, I think the best way is to lean on the experts. So as we progress the series, I'll be turning to people like Bishop Jamie, Isaac Weishaupt, James Strebel, and others who've spent years deep diving the darkness. But for now, grab a drink and pull up a seat as we ask, what is the occult and is it real? Okay, let's start off simple. The word occult just means hidden. That's it. Merriam-Webster says to occult something is to shut it off from view or exposure. So, for example, the light of a star could be occulted by a passing planet. But like so many words, occult has taken on its own societal identity. When we talk about the occult, we're talking about hidden knowledge, practices, and systems that claim to tap into forces most of us don't see in everyday life, such as spirits, energies, archetypes, or even other realms. And again, as we step into this, keep in mind, it doesn't matter if spirits, energies, or any of that exists. The occult's belief in them is as real as your belief in gravity. Now, it's not the same thing as mainstream religion, though the lines do blur sometimes. And I often wonder if occultists took the ceremonial from the religious, or if it was the other way around. But religion is usually public and open to everyone. The occult tends to be more insider. Personal power, secret teachings, techniques meant for those who are initiated or willing to go looking. Which makes sense. If you're indulging in, let's be generous and call them taboo practices, you don't want random curious people showing up. In fact, you need to vet pretty much anyone stepping through the door. Think of it like this. If regular spirituality is the public library, the occult is the restricted section you can only get to through a secret passage down in the basement. And trust, this stuff is not new. Occult practices date back thousands of years. You've got ancient Egypt with its magic and afterlife rituals, Babylon and its stargazers, Greek mystery schools, and the Hermetic tradition with the famous line, as above, so below. Add in alchemy, Gnosticism, and Kabbalah, and they all fed into what later became Western occultism. Fast forward to the 16th and 17th centuries, and you start seeing more modern secret societies popping up. We've looked at groups like the Knights Templar in past episodes who appear to have picked up occult practices from their time with the Hashashins and through the influence of St. Bernard. And we've seen how 250 years ago, in May of 1776, Adam Weishaupt used all these tenets when forming the Bavarian Illuminati. In our deep dive, one of the things we see is that throughout the years, they haven't gone away. Instead, their ideology spread through Europe and into the Americas. These people sit in positions of power throughout the world, and they've been shifting public perception for a long time. The point being that occult practices have continually found a vehicle to travel with us throughout history. But the version most relevant to us today, and that we'll be focusing on going forward, really kicked off during the turn of the 19th century. That's when Hermetic groups started bringing together a lot of these old threads you're likely familiar with through pop culture. Things like tarot reading, astrology, ritual magic. And out of this world steps one of the most famous and infamous names you'll hear in this series, Aleister Crowley. Now, I want to spend a minute on Mr. Crowley, shout out Ozzy, because he may be the single most influential figure in Western occultism. Alistair was born into a wealthy, strict Christian family in 1875. As he got older, he started to rebel against his conservative upbringing, and when he went away to Cambridge, his thirst for something different was infused with books on alchemy, mysticism, and even magic. Essentially everything his parents were not. Crowley immediately stood out academically, and through connections he made, received an extremely exclusive invitation to attend Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry. Okay, he didn't go to Hogwarts. But for anyone that ever wondered if there are Hogwarts schools out there, I give you the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. A Victorian secret magical school with initiations, graded lessons, robes, rituals, secret passwords, and an entire academic system for learning magic. Golden Dawn was founded in 1887 with the purpose of teaching members practical magic, spiritual development, and esoteric knowledge drawn from several traditions. If you received an invitation to join the school, you would go through a structured initiation, then enter into a 10-grade system with each grade focusing on a specific subject. The progression broke down something like this. Early grades, or what may be compared to elementary school, included basic symbolism, tarot reading, astrology, Kabbalah, and alchemy. What we might call middle school taught students ritual magic, scrying, which is a magical form of remote viewing, and astral projection, the idea of sending your spirit to other places while your body rests in one location. High school is when the advanced subjects hit. Work with angels, elemental spirits, and invoking divine forces. And understand, I want to paint this picture so you see it's not fantasy like the movies present it, but it is every bit as theatrical. The school even had its own temples with altars, pillars, and magical tools. The students wore robes color-coded by their grade. They had secret names and magical mottos. Their rituals involved wands, swords, vessels, pinnacles, and their curriculum mixed Egyptian, Greek, Christian, Jewish, and Renaissance magic into an intoxicating stew of self-indulgence. And speaking of wands, as a side note, they considered one specific type of wood to be the greatest conductor of magic, and that would be Hollywood. A few of his contemporaries at the school were Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, and Florence Farr, a famous actress and feminist. And as much as I want to deep dive the Golden Dawn and what it's evolved into, it'll be better if we come back to it down the road. So, Crowley was inducted in 1898 and shot up through the ranks. But, as was his wont, he caused a lot of drama at the school and eventually helped to fracture the order. After his time there, and armed with one of the rarest educations in the world, he started traveling. He went from Mexico to Egypt, India, China, anywhere he could immerse himself in mystical traditions. Then, in 1904, Crowley claimed that a spiritual being named Aiwass, whom he alleged was an ambassador of the god Horus, dictated a book to him, the Book of Law. This text became the sacred foundation for his new religion, Thelema. And the driving philosophy of this faith was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Or, in other words, the rules are that there are no rules. Complete indulgence and chaos. Basically, the most insane way to possibly live your life. So, understand, I focus on Crowley because the guy didn't just study the occult. He lived the occult. And for all intents and purposes, as far as the 20th century goes, he was the occult. He embraced the role of the great beast, 666, used drugs, used women in sexual magic, and deliberately courted scandal. To his followers, he was a genius and a liberator. To everyone else, he was one of the great dangers of his time. And if you remember one thing from this episode about the occult, it should be the importance of Aleister Crowley. Now, there's other names that come from Crowley's circle that we'll get into down the road, such as Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist who helped found NASA's JPL, and L. Ron Hubbard, who founded Scientology. Both were highly influential people who pushed the boundaries of science, psychology, and mysticism, so we'll definitely spend more time on them in the future. Now, there's a few big concepts that keep showing up, things you can expect to hear more about. The first is ritual and magic. The idea that certain actions, symbols, words, or states of mind can influence reality. Then there's sigils, or symbolic drawings charged with intent and used in chaos magic. Of course, many of you will be familiar with Baphomet already, the goat-headed, androgynous figure you see in a lot of imagery. To the occultist, it represents a balance of opposites. To most others, it represents a distortion of nature. There's the left-hand path versus the right-hand path. In short, the left hand is about self-deification and personal power. The right hand is more about harmony with the divine. And one we touched on earlier, revelation of the method. The theory that the elite now put occult symbolism right in front of us in music, videos, public ceremonies, fashion, and art, all with the intent of normalizing their beliefs and practices till multiple generations not only accept it, but accept the messaging behind it. So, is it real? Well, I'd say 100% that the occult is real. We know for a fact that there are people, past and present, who practice these things. So its factual existence is pretty locked in. But what about contacting other realms, casting spells, and evoking spirits? Is it possible that they aren't crazy? Well, at least regarding these spirits and entities. As a person of faith, I have to consider the idea that the entities they are trying to interact with may be real. That doesn't mean they are what we think they are, or that we can understand and control them. They could be interdimensionals, extraterrestrials, or something we share the planet with that was forgotten long ago. But ideas like this don't stick around for thousands of years without showing out some results to their believers. And we are living through an age where the supernatural and mystic are making a resurgence. When I was growing up in the 90s, it was repackaged as New Age and everyone laughed at the neo-hippies and their crystals. 30 years later, those people are running hospitals, schools, churches, and holding government offices. They're in charge of entertainment, choosing the songs played on the radio and the scripts that make it to Hollywood. And what started as one teenager's rebellion against his parents has spread and flourished in almost every part of the daily human experience. In fact, odds are that you know someone who at least dabbles in the occult. And I want to be clear, while I believe the occult itself is evil, that doesn't mean that I think every occultist is. A lot of people are drawn to the occult from a position of empathy. Oh, sure, there are plenty out there who just want power, but often you'll see someone start looking into it with the goal of finding peace, righting an injustice, or protecting the defenseless. The problem is that the occult strongly rewards imagination, intuition, and subjective experience. So those who have trouble balancing empathy with realism can get lost in a self-reinforcing bubble, causing a good person to lose their way. In other words, it can be dangerous to play with this stuff. I'm reminded of Lord of the Rings when Frodo offers the One Ring to Gandalf and he flips out. In the book, he lays it out perfectly. Gandalf says, "Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good. Do not tempt me." And this, I think, is the great lure and deception of the occult. Appealing to our natural empathy, offering a power others don't have that can be used for good, and finally, compromising morality till the good person is gone. Friedrich Nietzsche certainly had his issues, but when he said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster, and if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you," I believe he was spot on. He was specifically warning about the psychological and spiritual danger of engaging with darkness. He firmly believed that prolonged exposure to the abyss changes you. It can hollow you out, invert your values, or even turn you into the very thing you set out to resist. So, why highlight a topic that could be dangerous? Well, I guess because it's going to be dangerous whether you know about it or not. If you let yourself fall down the rabbit hole, you may become Alice, trapped in a world you never wanted to be in. But if you don't know about it at all, you can't have a full picture of the world we're all trying to navigate every day. And remember what we said at the beginning of the episode. Occult beliefs don't have to be true. They just need people to believe they are true. And there are a shocking amount of people around us every day who believe. I want to thank you all for stopping by the fire tonight. This is going to be an interesting subject going forward. Occult symbolism and rituals are out in the open, and while I'm going to avoid contemporary politics, I will try to point out what is going on in real time, similar to quick fires, but of course focused on the occult. And as I said at the beginning, I'll have to turn to the experts a lot in future episodes, so I'm considering a format with interviews, but all that will come with time. For now, I'll just say thanks again for stopping by, and remember, always do your own research and never sell yourself short. Take care out there, and God bless.